Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I'm your host, Kashi, Sehgal, and it is another wonderful Thursday in the world. You're here. I'm here. Our guest is here. It's going to be a great day. So let's dive right in to our Stepping Block segment. This is your career powered by data. They're a big data platform. They have a lot of data points, 100 million plus worth of data points. So that's different people, different careers, different inputs, and they can help you figure out what you need to focus on or give you a little clarity on things you're interested in. Today, we are talking about diversity and equity and inclusion. All big terms, all very buzzworthy and in the news right now for good reason, or not so good reason. So let us talk about diversity as a career for a few minutes. Okay, so the most common education background or common degree is a degree in psychology, which I found interesting. And there are so few people in this industry. It is kind of crazy. It said just over 3,000 people in the industry. That probably doesn't take into account everybody working on diversity within companies who don't have that in their title or something, but still really low compared to some of the industries we've seen that have had hundreds of thousands of people in the industry. The average age of the industry is 41. 65% female. Top skills are public speaking, leadership, research. And if you're trying to make a little bit more money within the field, you want to be in org development, culture change, community development. I would say those are probably also related to consulting. And so maybe those are consultants coming in and helping. There is definitely money in consulting. And then a lot of people come from these schools: University of Houston, University of Washington, and Michigan State. So our guest today is in diversity. She also has a strong background in PR, which we talked about a few weeks ago, has a lot of people in the industry. So I want to bring our guest on screen now. Hello, welcome, Soon Mee.
Kashi, it's so good to be with you. I'm giving you a big virtual bear hug.
I'm so happy that you're here with us. So, everyone, Soon Mee Kim is Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Omnicom Public Relations, which is a very big role. And we really want to dive into how she got there. So, Soon Mee, please start us off by telling us where you're from and where you went to school. And what did you major in?
Yeah. Hey, Kashi. So, thank you so much for the introduction. I went to school at Emory University in Atlanta. I'm responsible currently for 13 specific agencies within Omnicom Public Relations Group and 17 different brands across the globe. And I work with a fantastic team at the respective agencies. But in terms of how I got started, I am one of those folks that did not enter through the areas and majors that you talked about. I was a political science major, and I've been in the communications and public relations field on the agency side my entire career. So it makes a lot of sense that I'm working in my diversity role within the context of communications and marketing services.
All right. So there's a lot to dig into, and I want to start with your career in PR. I think that's probably also related to what you're doing now. A lot of those skill sets are applicable. But let's talk about PR for a second. So what would you say is the skill set that you really need to be successful in the field of PR? And does that differ between agency life and maybe working for a brand or a company?
Sure. I mean, I would probably answer that a few different ways, Kashi. I think being in the public relations and communications fields is a really great background to consider when moving into diversity, equity, inclusion, and for a few reasons. I think often those roles within companies serve as the conscience for our organizations. And the reason for that is because we are often really at the front lines of listening to our stakeholders, both internally and externally. So our employees and their experience within an organization, but also in terms of our customers and clients and partners. So I think it just brings in a perspective of listening and of learning. And particularly in the agency setting, I think an agency is a lifelong apprenticeship. It is constant learning, and it's not just one way. It's from more kind of early career professionals all the way into the most senior roles, that it requires active listening, active learning, and also active counseling to our clients as well. So there's that constancy that I think is really important and informative to a diversity, equity, and inclusion role.
Yeah. So is it different? Is PR different when you're thinking about externally for clients versus internally for employees?
You know what? I think more and more it's the same, right? I think whether you're internal to the organization or external, I think we're asking more and more for accountability. We're asking for transparency. We're asking for trust. We're asking for like a sense of belonging. We want to be connected to organizations or even organizations that we buy products from, that we want alignment with our values. So I think more and more that is becoming, I think, more similar. I do think particularly in these times of crisis and values, it's so critical that we are centering our people within our organizations, I would say first, so that whenever we're kind of saying outside of the four walls, that those are true and the intentions are real within those four walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've mentioned a lot about values and things being in alignment. Let's turn from PR a bit to your role in DEI. Do you think, well, how did you get into diversity, equity, and inclusion? How did you make that leap from one skill set to the other within an organization or at a new organization?
Sure. So one thing that I will say that I'm absolutely the beneficiary of working in a racially and ethnically diverse office, as an example. So right around me are people that I consider my sisters and close friends and people that I connect to, and we're really kind of in each other's lives, and the across the table kind of conversations are ones that create a certain tightness, right? And so when you have those kinds of environments, I think they're so critical to building understanding and common empathy, recognizing our common humanity. And so when tragedies strike, we're in it for each other. I mean, my colleagues are some of my closest friends in terms of supporting me, checking on me in this time of the anti-Asian hate that we're seeing. And then similarly, when my colleagues are so sad and experiencing trauma as they watch the news, whether it's the Derek Chauvin trial or back in the day with the Philando Castile and so many others, I'm like, I feel that pain as well. And so I think that's such the importance of having diversity in the workplace, is that we create, I think, these friendships and networks and community that are so critical in just building our common understanding and support for one another. So that, I will say, has been critical in my wanting to be in a role like this. But I will also say part of just who I am and how I've grown up and the perspectives gained from being the first to the only, the different, from being on the margin. It's just a different perspective than, and the gift, I will say, than being perhaps as part of a culture where you don't have to kind of strain to have those perspectives.
Yeah, I think that is such a key point, actually. How do you expect, I don't know if this might be a tough question, but how do you expect someone who hasn't grown up with that diversity around them, to then be conscious of it and thoughtful of it in their work lives and in their adult lives?
Yeah. You know what? I think there's a few different ways that I might answer that question, Kashi. So right now, as we're in kind of still in a little bit of that kind of lockdown, right? Not fully lockdown is probably not the right word, but we're sheltering in place. I mean, we have experienced a lot of content. We've consumed a lot of content, right? And I think with the different streaming services and platforms and social media and so forth, it actually gives us a lot more access, at least in those ways, to learn different perspectives. I mean, I know that I seek that out. I seek that out whether it's external to my culture or internal to my culture. For example, there's a great series called Asian Americans that's streaming on PBS. They brought it back for Asian American Pacific Heritage Month. And I'm like, I'm embarrassed to tell you, like, I learned some things when I first saw that, last year when it aired. And there's so much that I need to know about myself and as well as others. And so I think that's at least one way that we can at least broaden our minds to other perspectives. So I think that's so important.
Totally. So as it relates to buy-in from employees at a company, how do you get employees to really own something like this, own a concept like being inclusive and being not just okay, but like celebrating diversity? And does it matter if they accept it and they celebrate it and they're all about it, if the leadership isn't also feeling the same way?
I think there's something that is important. So in diversity, equity, and inclusion, we talk about the fact, just the moral imperative of diversity, equity, inclusion, that it's just, the right thing to do. And, that I feel like that should honestly be enough. That shouldn't we all strive to, create more fair and equitable systems.
Yeah.
And then secondly, like, there is a business imperative for sure, that all of the research shows that, when we are more diverse, equitable, inclusive, we perform better on every measure. I don't see anything that really kind of rejects that. So it's in our best interest. But then thirdly, where I grow concerned is, sure, those are all kind of, I guess, bonuses, right? So like, you perform better as an organization, we're doing the right thing. But we're also operating in deficit. And that's actually what concerns me, that we're at risk when our organizations, our leaders, our people are not more open to others. And I have to think back to when I was a little kid, and I remember, back when we used to have Kool-Aid in the pitcher, and we would, pour that in the glasses for all of our friends, and like some would have a little bit more, some would have a little less, and it just all depends on the technique of the pourer. But I remember just even in those old days, like, hey, that's not fair, right? There's that little social justice warrior, I think, even as a little kid, that we know when something's like not right, not fair, and that we should all have a fair shot, even at Kool-Aid. So I think there's this kind of instinctive nature that is part of us that, like, we understand. We know that, everyone should have a fair shot at most everything. So yeah, I would just kind of build on the fact that I think that is, if people don't necessarily fully embrace that now, it may just be that we've got to tap into our younger selves.
Yeah, we need to tap into our younger selves for, I would say, quite a bit. Creativity, accepting risk, all the things. Okay, so why is diversity so hard? Why does it seem like such a hard concept?
I think that the way that I would answer that question is I would answer that with the word fear. I think there are a lot of forces at play that kind of misrepresent what diversity means or who it includes. Diversity includes everyone. Diversity is on so many different dimensions. And if we understood that really kind of at the core, I'm like, why would we would we fight that, right? But I also recognize like we have systems in place that have been built on some mistruths that we need to absolutely recognize. I will say, I think back to my education even. Like I am honestly angry when I think about my education. I grew up in Georgia. There's a class that every Georgian is required to take to graduate high school, and it's Georgia Studies. And we take that in 8th grade. And I think back to Georgia Studies, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm pretty angry about the fact that I didn't learn some really critical things around slavery, around redlining, around just mistreatment of Native people. That was not part of that course. So I think we have to really address our educational system and what we're learning and not learning. And that is what happens when we build in kind of that lack of knowledge across the board. And we build systems, and then we create situations where we think that we're trying to be fair and so forth. But if those are built on misinformation, then that's what's perpetuated. And I think that's where we're at the state that we're at. I think we have to kind of face up to the fact that we need to create more equitable systems, and that perhaps intentionally or unintentionally are in the state that they are.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned content and the digital world. How is the digital world changing how you do your job and evangelizing for these very important concepts? Is it making it easier? Is it making it harder in some ways? It just feels like there's a lot out there.
Yeah, I think they're like everything, right? There are the pros and the cons. Like what I miss, Kashi, are like opportunities. Like I'm thinking back to the last time we had coffee together. We were across the table from each other, and we're talking through things. And there's just something really special about being physically in the presence of others, right? And that sense of like human touch and a hug, and just knowing that we are there for one another in those moments. I will also say we have a lot of things that we can be really appreciative of, even in this virtual world. So over the last year, I've had so many folks that I've had an opportunity to mentor, to build relationships and communities with, and just check in on each other. And I don't think any of that is going away. That is here to stay. And those are the positives, that we've broken a lot of the barriers for connecting, just as a course of action, a normal course of action. So all of that I will want to keep, and I want the coffees. So those are the pros and the cons, and I think we've got to figure out what is it that it truly is, that more hybrid, that's not a back to what it was, but what is this beautiful new future that we can create with the support of the digital platforms.
Mm-hmm. What role, you also mentioned this earlier, what role do you think companies should play in the community to spearhead thought leadership and different initiatives, or should they even get involved?
Specific to diversity, equity, inclusion, do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so important that we are taking time to reflect, right? And that we're then sharing that out, back out into the world. So in terms of the thought leadership, yeah, that's really, really important. So I guess broadly speaking, I'm in support of folks that are taking the time to share that. I'll also say thoughts are not enough, right? So thought leadership is one aspect, but we need other types of leadership, stuff that's not sexy, the stuff that are the systems that you'll never see, visibly, that people are going to be talking about on a blog post or something like that. And so, there's that unsexy, invisible work that is happening in the background that folks, we also need leadership on.
Yeah. So when we talk about some of the things that have been in the news recently, like we're both Asian, so let's do the Asian hate thing, okay? It's terrible, just like all other hate. But companies have signed on to this concept of stop Asian hate, and it feels like you're just seeing it everywhere. Is that helpful? Is it meaningful that everybody feels like they're jumping on the bandwagon. Is there usefulness to that, or how do we make that a better focused, or do we need to?
Yeah, so I will not criticize anyone who wants to get on the bandwagon to stop Asian hate. So I will support all of those efforts. I will take the, awareness building. I'll take the posts, whatever that is, like, please, because for the longest time, we did not have that awareness. I know people like yourself and we've been aware of it. We've been watching it. We've been afraid. We've told our families to be careful. We've been super concerned as they travel or go to the grocery store for a while now. And yet no major outlets were really covering this until, the Atlanta spa shootings. So it took a major tragedy for that to even get the attention of a lot of people. I have a lot of people that have mentioned to me, like, you know what, my company's not said one darn thing. They haven't asked how I am. They haven't made a statement against this, or they've, so just a lack of acknowledgement. So if folks are acknowledging this, thank you. I appreciate all of that. Can we do more? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can do so much more on a number of fronts. Do I have the solution to, stop Asian hate? It seems so basic, Kashi. It seems so basic. It's like, yeah, just stop.
Just stop.
Stop hating us, right? But also just recognizing our common humanity, across the board. And I would say this to people of Asian descent: if you're haven't already been voicing, and there are so many who have, so please, this is not a statement against that. There are so many people. I want people to know that have been in solidarity with the terrible acts of racism that have been happening across the country, and not just recently, for a long time. But for those who have been less vocal and are experiencing this pain in a different way, please, this should be an example of the fact that if you're scared that when your parents are going out for a walk and that they can't be themselves, let's think about the LGBTQ plus community. Let's think about the trans community that feels that way. If we're having those conversations with our family, like, hey, be hyper vigilant. I want to make sure that you get home. Let's remember the Black community and the talk that has to occur just to be safe in our world. So I think there's so much that we can, in our experiences, use to be in greater solidarity with one another.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a product that I saw advertised a few days ago, and I just shook my head that we're at this point in our culture. But it's a security service that you can turn on and actually have them on while you walk out in public, or you're doing something out in public, so that there's always someone there and always someone recording in case something happens. Where are we in our society where that is something that people would actually pay for?
Yeah, that honestly makes me sad, but also very familiar, right? So as women, I think we are also, we've been hyper vigilant when we go to the parking lot, and I was sad to hear, this was even a year ago when a lot of these Asian attacks were occurring. I remember seeing that statistic of like gun sales had gone up dramatically in the Asian community in California. So, it makes me sad that we are in this state.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pull back up. We could spend a lot of time talking about some of these topics, but let's go back to like skill sets and career. When you're interviewing for a role in your organization, on your team, what is an interview question that you typically ask that gives you insight into what you're looking for?
Yeah. So I will say, for me, what I look for, like, I want people that are compassionate. I want people that are curious, that are really aware of what's going on in the world. I want folks that have a high sense of empathy. I think that's what it takes to be a good human, as well as a good leader, a good colleague. I will also say I look for initiative. Like, what are the things that you, again, your curiosity leads to, that you want to learn more about, and you're building your knowledge base around that. I think curious people with initiative, with high empathy, you're naturally going to be successful because you are learning, you are driving, you are, affecting change just through, your information gathering, your knowledge gathering. So those would be a few things that I think are really important to me.
Mm-hmm. What would you say your purpose is? What's your why?
Yeah, my purpose. There's a lot that's kind of wrapped up in that, but I will say the first term that comes to mind is the words racial reconciliation. I'm someone who grew up in the South. I'm someone who, my father was a professor at different HBCUs. So when we were growing up, we were singing, spirituals and gospels just as a little kid. But I also remember the context within all of that. It was in the South. I've lived in so many different states in the South, and I have to remember that my sisters went to schools named for Confederate generals. Like, that's real. We just thought that was America, and just this and all of that. And then I've talked about this a lot, but like in the weekends is when we were part of church, and Korean church specifically, and so all of those kind of confluences, it kind of inform where I kind of come from, and how I think about things. So I think as I think about just perspective and bringing that to what I do, I think all of that is just who we are at our core. I think it certainly impacts like what and how we operate.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have student questions coming in, so I think we should jump over to those. Forget my list. They have better questions. Okay, Jill would like to know, what do you think are the secrets behind getting to where you've got to go?
What are the secrets between getting where you go? I think I'm going to take a little twist on that. I think we've got to uncover and put sunlight on these secrets. They shouldn't be secrets. And that's why I think what you're doing is so important. When I was starting out, they really were secrets. I didn't know anybody in the corporate world. My father happened to be a professor, but that wasn't going to be too helpful to me. And other people I knew, they were small business people. We were, part of an immigrant family. So, that just taught me was like, hey, all I knew was I got to work hard. And I need to make sure that I don't embarrass my family along the way. And that can take you a certain, to certain places, because you want to do a good job. But what I didn't know, and what I know, and I wish I'd known to get that would maybe had helped my career, is that what are those things that I didn't really want to do? I hated networking. Like that always felt really uncomfortable for me. Or even just the idea of I don't know, in public relations, about pitching media, right? And that always felt super uncomfortable for me, but you got to do what you got to do. And what I wish I'd known, that I think I do a little bit better today, is recognizing the importance of reframing, the importance of purpose and intention, and the importance of agency. I don't think I really realized how much agency I had. I kind of did what I had to do with the task that was before me. And what I think is really critical now is we are, the decisions that we make, the way that we view things are really important. And so I would say that sense of agency, that sense of purpose, being aligned there are, I think, the things that can help propel a career.
Okay, well, that was a loaded answer. That was good. Uncovered some secrets there for sure. Donna wants to know, how do you get into a career in diversity? How do I get my foot in the door? Yeah,
so Donna, right? Mm-hmm. So Donna, what I would say to that is, yes, there's a lot of interest in this as a career field. So I see a lot of people, even, I guess, more steeped within their current spaces, wanting to move into these spaces. some folks that are, let's say, more traditionally in HR. Also, as you noticed with me, I come from, the communications field. So I think we need to remember that what makes a good diversity, equity, inclusion professional can come from a lot of different spaces. And even as we enter into those spaces, there are those that are a little bit more kind of activist, if you will. There are others that apply more, let's say, management discipline. There are some that are more, comes from the space of like crisis communication. So there are just a lot of different ways to be even a DEI professional. Let's just kind of recognize that. For folks who come to me who are, let's say, already ensconced in their careers, some places that you can look are for certificates. So I know like Georgetown has one, Cornell has a diversity certificate, Northwestern has one, but I think there are many. So those are some places where you can look to build that skill set. And then the other place I would just say is to be really entrepreneurial and show initiative within your own organizations. Many are forming committees and task forces because of that need that exists. And that is a really great place to just get involved and be a leader and support. So those are a few ways that I would consider.
So are there internships in the space that students can apply for?
You know what? I believe that there are, but traditionally, diversity, equity, inclusion has been housed a little bit more closely on the HR side. So I think that's one avenue. In other spaces, I think it's really being more kind of built right now. And so I don't know that there's like a formal way to hear about this other than if you know folks, kind of a thing. So I wish it was a little bit more organized as a way to do that, but sadly, I don't know of what those ways are.
Yeah, so maybe reach out to people that you see that you would like to know, find them on LinkedIn and tell them you're interested.
Yes, I think that sounds like a really great way to show initiative and
yes.
shake those trees to loosen some opportunities up.
Yeah. Isaiah would like to know, what do you think is your greatest strength?
Thanks for the question, Isaiah. My greatest strength. Gosh, I don't know. I might get a little bit stumped here. Okay, I'll answer this a couple of ways. So supposedly, there are like two main kind of characteristics of like the Korean character. And they're the words Chung and the second word is Han. And I'll say the Chung part is about relationship, like really being connected to one another. So I do feel that deeply within who I am. And I will say the Han part, Han is a little bit on the other side, which is like the sense of like despair, like a deep despair, but with a tinge of like, I'm going to get you. And I will say, if I can admit this, like I do, like I have all the feelings, just like we all do. We're fully human. We have a full spectrum of emotions. And I do have that sense of kind of righteous anger, if you will, that is deep within my bones. And I use it. It is a friend to me. It motivates me and it helps me get things done. If I don't sometimes feel, I'm like, hey, where are you, friend? So it's something that I really kind of use to kind of inspire me and have the resilience that I need in my work.
Yeah, and that's a great example of taking what could be negative or destructive in your life, and we all have those feelings of like anger about something, and it is a great strength to be able to turn that into something that can be motivating and encouraging and drive you to take initiative, right? The word they used. So that is definitely a strength. Although she has many, but we do not have enough time to list them. Thank you. Thomas wants to know, what is the biggest lesson you have learned in life to date, and what do you wish you had learned earlier?
My biggest lesson.
Career, life.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm always trying to learn. So I'm trying to like pick up like, what is that one thing? I would go back to maybe what I just said before. I mean, I think I Okay, this is, well, what I'll say is like there's a phrase that I would constantly kind of hear from, I would say my mom when I was growing up, whenever I would have like negative emotions or, kind of tamp down certain kind of things that weren't positive, right? So, and that word is the word chama. And if anyone is listening that happens to be Korean, you'll be familiar with that. And chama means kind of like bear it. And I kind of have joked, like, if we ever had a family crest, it would say chama. And I would, and I'm like, sure, that's fine. There's like a lot of positives in being, tolerant, I suppose, and being resilient and bearing things. That's not an easy thing. But I will also say what I will tie into like what I've learned is like sometimes like I'm not going to bear it. And that's what as I get older, I'm like, yeah, I will not tolerate that. I will not bear that. I will be using my voice. And so for some of us, that voice becomes louder and stronger as we get older. And I certainly feel like that has happened for me. So that's one of the things I wish I'd maybe channeled a little bit differently when I was younger. But I'll accept God's time.
Makes a lot of sense. Kyan would like to know what is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job. Kyan, my favorite part of my job is honestly times like this to be able to connect with others. I mean, there's part of me that I would love to just like go into my little hole with my books and and be shut in. But I also realize like there's such importance in the fact that the force multiplying effect that we have when we are in community with one another, when we're having conversations with one another, when we're learning with one another. And that goes both ways, how much I learn from others and even their questions that are, causing me to do some reflection. So I will say just the opportunity to connect is probably my favorite part of my role.
Okay, so on the other side of this, Cheyenne wants to know, what is one of the most difficult conversations you've had lately?
Oh, Cheyenne, how much time do we have? You know what? This job is really hard. It requires a lot of emotional resilience. For a few weeks now, maybe every third person I know has been in tears. Maybe it was me. There's a lot of emotional labor. And so our conversations have stemmed, so the folks that are doing this work across all of our organizations, we're responding. We're often first responders to the real hurt that our people are experiencing. And so just the act of like doing the work of trying to be a healer and a consoler and a builder and a creator, and at the same time being part of marginalized communities that are being traumatized is super hard. And so, trying to be that support for one another is, a lot of the kind of conversations that we're going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would imagine that hopefully there is a support system in place, because you're doing the hard work and you also need an outlet. So, okay, Crystal would like to know, how has your background and experience prepared you to be effective in the field of DEI?
Okay, Krista, right?
Crystal.
Crystal. Thank you. I'm a name warrior, Crystal. So I have to get it right, because especially with a name like mine that gets chopped this way or that way or the other. So Crystal, so nice to get your name exactly right. Guys, I'll go back into what we were talking about in terms of background experience. I think, anyone who's doing this work, we can't just be, part of who we are, right? So I think everything we are, from our identities, how we were born, how we were raised, the perspective that brings, my hope is that brings us, creates connection points, and it creates a sense of empathy that we have for one another. I think the way that I think about this is, sure, there are the work experiences that I've already talked about with you, Kashi, at the beginning of the hour, but I will also say that I'm a person of deep faith. And so I consider this ministry. I consider this a vocation and a calling. And so I'll say that I'll probably answer with that. I think of this as it's faith work for me.
Mm-hmm. Andrew wants to know, do you do a lot of speaking? And if so, how do you feel about it? And how do you find speaking opportunities?
Yeah, I do a lot of speaking. I was joking with somebody today. Are you sick of me yet? Because I am sick of myself. But and do I like it? I mean, gosh, there's certain things that sure, I so enjoy an opportunity like this to connect with my good friend Kashi, and for you all that are part of this, that's super gratifying. And then, as you also heard, I don't have any problem with going into my little hole and reading my books, and all of that is good. So I feel like I appreciate solitude as well. And I also know that I have a responsibility. So even as much as I'd like to go into that little crevice of and read my books, I know I've had too many experiences where I've had people, like, let's say after a in real life speaking engagement, who are in tears and they've never seen someone that looks like them represented anywhere or in a speaking role or anything like that. And so I think we have a responsibility to answer the call and also make space so that other people have the opportunity to be in those roles too. So I think it's a responsibility that we hold as well. And I can't remember the last question. Oh, how do I, you know what? I honestly feel like I get to meet and be around the most amazing people on the planet. And as far as speaking, it's usually not anything that I seek out, but it's usually a friend asking. And at this point, I feel like I've gotten a lot of really good friendships and invitations from friends.
I should also say that Soon Mee is an incredible speaker. I remember, it still sticks out in my mind, seeing you speak at the Leadership Atlanta 50th celebration.
Oh, thank you.
Thing.
Yeah, what's the big idea? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was so genuine and from the heart what you said that, I mean, that was years ago. And it really left an impact on me. So Soon Mee is a fantastic speaker.
Oh, thank you, Kashi. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Okay, last question. You've mentioned books a lot and crawling into your hole with a book. So Caleb would like to know, of the books that have come out in the last couple of years, I guess on the topic of topically these days, I guess on Black Lives Matter or any of these topics, which ones do you think are the most worthwhile to read?
Okay, Caleb, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Caleb, I'm going to first point to some oldies but goodies. So I recently read, like every Martin Luther King holiday, I reread Why We Can't Wait. And it's an old one from my dad where the pages are fraying, and it's written when Martin Luther King Jr. was actually alive. So it's funny because like the back page shows like kind of gives his credentials. And of course I'm like, no. So it's just funny because I go back in time and read that. But, Letter from a Birmingham Jail and the admonition of white moderate clergy. I mean, I receive that and I think about like, where am I, in this, and who do I identify with, and how am I in support and not? So that's one. And then recently I read Angela Davis's, I think it's Freedom is a Constant Struggle. And gosh, Angela Davis is brilliant. So those are a few kind of oldies but goodies. And I would also speak to anything James Baldwin, Fire. So let's not forget the oldies. And then as far as like what's recent that I've read that I really have enjoyed, I love Just Us. I believe it's Claudia Rankine. And it's just like such a like the pages have weight, there's visuals, there's poetry, there's just different elements of it that I think is like such a good experience in addition to just beautiful words on a page. So it's just presented in a really cool way. So that's just us.
Didn't she also write Citizen?
Oh, yes, but I haven't.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Okay. I was it the same kind of experience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very powerful.
All right. So that'll be next on my crazy long, tall list of books, stack of books. And then another one is Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. I think she does such a great job of talking about Asian American history, but also bringing it into the present day and the concepts of model minority and bamboo ceiling and so many things like that. I think she presents all of that in a very kind of modern way, and then touches on our history that's so necessary. So those are just a couple I'll mention.
Interesting. Very interesting. Bamboo ceiling. That's a very interesting concept. I thank you for asking that, Caleb, because I am definitely going to pick up a few of those. Well, we are out of time with you, Soon Mee, today, and we're sad about that, but very happy that you were able to join us. Students, please make sure that you go to our website, supernovacommence.com. Make sure you're signed up for the mailing list. We've got all kinds of fun things and great opportunities that come to you via the mailing list. So if you're not on there, you're not seeing them or hearing about them. So make sure you're signed up. We also have all our past shows on the site and all over the web at #Supernova Commencements. You can really find us anywhere. We made it super easy. Next week's show is going to also be pretty awesome. Another dynamic woman, Allison Fillmore, is joining us, and she is Vice President and Executive Director of the Tour Championship, which is an amazing golf championship here in Atlanta. So we will be chatting with her. Soon Mee, thank you again. Do you have any closing thoughts for our students?
Oh my gosh. I would say thank you. Thank you to Crystal, Caleb, and everyone else that asked the great questions. And Kashi, thank you so much for the invitation. It was so wonderful to just spend time with you. So I appreciate SuperNova Commencements and everything that you're doing to support students and people that are curious and wanting to make a difference.
Thank you so much. And students, it is getting close to commencement time. So I hope... are we in midterms? No, we're basically in finals, right? So I hope you're having a great end to your semester. And I can't believe we're already there. Feels like we just started the semester. But make the most of this unique time. Remember, we're here for you, whether you're having a commencement or not. We got your commencement speakers, all the great commencement speakers. So remember, it's a blessing to be a blessing. Be kind to someone today. As you go through your day, stay safe and healthy, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.